In this lesson, we'll take a look at quarantined items. I'm in the status section of my gateway under connections and store and forward. You can see I have a quarantined item that seems to be coming from my MySQL store and forward engine. When a record is placed into the quarantine, it means that the query was unable to execute successfully. Instead of repeatedly trying to run the query, it is placed aside in the quarantine, providing you an opportunity to correct or remove the record. Let's see what's going on with this record. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to click on the Details button. And I'll scroll down just a little bit over here. And you can see we have something listed under our quarantine items table here. We can see the ID the system gave the quarantine item, as well as a count. If the same query is running multiple times, the system considers them all the same item, but different instances. We get a description of what the item is, as well as the reason that it failed. Now I intentionally caused this item to become quarantined. I have a transaction group that's running, and it's trying to write to a table called table old. I renamed the table in my database to something else, but the transaction group executed before I could update the table name in the group's settings. Because of this, I now have a quarantined item. I could retry the query by clicking the retry button, but in this case it will fail again, since table old still doesn't exist. Note that when I retry a query, if it fails, it will remain in the quarantine. The engine does not drop items from the quarantine, regardless of how many times you retry them. I could remove them, but then the data would be lost forever. So what I could do instead is I could click on this export button over here. I'm going to try to fix this record so I can insert it back into my database. I'm going to click export. This is going to download an XML file. I'm going to open it up here. You can use the text editor of your choice. And here we can see all my data, as well as the database table that this is trying to write to. In my case, all I have to do is modify the name of the table the record is attempting to insert to. So I'm just going to change the name of this table to match the new table name. I'm going to save my file. I'm going to move this over. And I'm going to come over to this little import quarantine items area here. I'm going to expand this. I'm going to pass that file in. I'll go ahead and select the file. I'll click open and click submit. The page is going to reload, and if I scroll on down here, you now see I have two different items. So after importing a slightly different item into the quarantine, the system did not remove the old item. This gives me an opportunity to try pushing my corrected items into the database, and then verify that they went where I wanted them to go. If not, I could take another export and try again. So for this top item here, the newly created item, I'm going to click the retry button. This is going to inject this back into one of the buffers and attempt to store the data into my database. So I'll click retry, and in just a moment, you can see that the record went in. Now that my updated record has been inserted, I can go ahead and delete my old records here. I'll go and click the delete all button. I'll click delete all again just to confirm. And just like that, the old faulty record's gone. So if there ever is a problem in the store and forward with any of your data, you can always check the quarantine to see what the issue is and then make your corrections.